How are you guys doing? My name is Katz, and I'm one of the 11 candidates running for the Santa Clarita City Council. Many of you are probably wondering what I'm doing here, entering a political race while I'm still in college. Well, you're not alone. My father wonders the same thing, at least some of the time. He also noted that a councilman pay probably won't even cover my tuition and books at College of the Canyons. So why am I running? Well, nearly 40% of Santa Clarita is under the age of 25. Our council is a generation older than that, with an average age of around 50. I offer the perspective of the next generation of leadership, seeing the world through a different lens, with a different life experiences. My generation will face challenges unlike any others, particularly at that stage in its relatively young life. The impact of global economics, a continuously falling dollar, exporting of jobs, global warming, population shifts, and demographic changes, and international terrorism are all relatively recent issues. These are national problems, but they have very localized impacts, and we need to be marshaling our local talent and resources to address them. My experience includes being a political science major at College of the Canyons, serving as an intern for the Office of Lieutenant Governor, and working as an aide to a local congressional candidate. Some of you may also know me from my involvement with the Santa Clarita Development Corporation, which runs the homeless shelter out here. My experience will broaden that on a council whose members' backgrounds include education, program analysts, and PTA memberships. But they view the current young population through a prism of nearly a quarter of a century ago. When we taught civics in schools, we learned that one of the benchmarks of a successful democracy is the orderly transition of power and leadership. It is my view that the potential leaders should be culled out from the younger generation and developed as they acquire political leadership experience, particularly in public life. Term limits, which California adopted for statewide offices and for our local assembly and state senate, fosters that type of transition. Our city has chosen not to impose these limits. One of the consequences is for security for long-term incumbents, and perhaps the lack of cross-pollination that a council with a broader base composition offers. Though I think the single biggest issue facing our local economy and our nation is employment. I remember my father telling me that businesses would flow to the locations with cheaper labor costs, and that this was a continuous and not a static process. He recounted how textile mills moved from the Northeast to the non-union South. But they didn't remain there. Mills were later set up in the Dominican Republic, then in Mexico, and then in cheaper parts of Central America, and to India. From there, the textiles moved to Bangladesh, China, and even Vietnam. He cautioned that the service economy, which was what we became when we stopped producing physical products, would follow the same pattern. And today, financial transactions are processed overseas, and the voices at call-in centers for credit cards and computer support have the accents you find at local 7-Elevens. And even as we come out of this recession, we know that the recovery is happening faster overseas, first and fastest. The news this week reported that hiring in India by outsourcing company was up 5% last quarter. So this kind of poses a catch-22 for us. So to protect our way of life, do we reestablish protectionism? And if so, what happens to the part of the California economy that is export sensitive, like entertainment production and agriculture? For some time, business leaders have been exporting our technology, seeking the lowest labor cost as the answer to being competitive. That approach has run its course, resulting in both jobs and American IOUs in the hands of foreign nations. We should be using our technology to retain our jobs, to protect our production processes, such as the replication cost abroad is difficult, if not impossible, to match. These many national issues I referred to have local impacts, and it is at our city and county levels that we should be addressing them. Governor Schwarzenegger addressed this in a recent conference of the subject of climate change, applauding the effort of local communities to address these matters, even if the federal government is mired in politics. Although the City Council doesn't control the school boards, Council does have the influence because of its position as a political leadership. Education may not be in the council's jurisdiction, but the local unemployment that results from inadequately prepared students will be the city's problem. Is the curriculum we offer preparing our children for the world's economy of tomorrow or the U.S. economy of yesterday? Do students understand enough civics and governments to comprehend and appreciate the legislative process so as not to fall prey to the catchphrase, if I ran my business the way the government runs it, I'd be out of business? Or do they know enough not to succumb to the promised quick fixes that a dictatorship may offer? As Sinclair Lewis ominously wrote a century ago, when dictatorship comes to America, it will not be with tanks and guns, but it will be wrapped in a flag. What we do in Santa Clarita's economy, what do we want Santa Clarita's economy to look like 10 to 20 years from now? From the answer to these series of questions follows the curriculum and courses we should be emphasizing our schools to have. And for those who believe that these are national or state matters out of the reach of city government or county governments, I would ask them, is it by mere chance that Detroit's unemployment rate exceeds 25% and Santa Clarita's is less than 10%? What we do locally does matter. We absolutely do need continued development, the kind that's economically sound, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible. Obviously, I don't have all the answers. Hell, I may not have any of the answers. But we know that the prior approaches don't work, and we need to be thinking about innovative solutions. Unless we want to rethink our model, we'll see progressively more of our jobs go abroad, expanding the dimensions of the Rust Belt to more of the U.S. landscape. On local crime, Santa Clarita is not unique. All cities are plagued by gang violence and graffiti. And none of these traditional methods of crime control or law enforcement, many of which involve more police officers on the street, has produced, I don't think, a satisfactory answer. And for those who favor this approach, here are a few statistics. A police car manned by 2 deputies with 24/7 coverage costs $1 million per year, and that's for a single car. It costs $25,000 per year to keep an inmate in prison. We should be experimenting, and I emphasize the word experiment. Other approaches, including social programs that address gang membership and local petty crime, particularly graffiti, differently. Some may work, we don't know which. Some may fail, we also don't know which. But what we do know is that relying exclusively on historical formulas doesn't provide a satisfactory answer. And more importantly, it's not the best use of our city's limited resources. And most importantly, I think we need to develop a better sense of community in Santa Clarita. We need to stop thinking of ourselves as Newhall, Saugus, Valencia, and Canyon Country, and start thinking of ourselves as Santa Clarita. That cohesiveness gives us a sense of community and helps us ensure that all sections of the city get a fair share of the $27 million capital improvement program. There are 5 members on the city council. We have 3 open seats. I ask you to make me one of the voices that speaks for the community from behind the desk in that chamber. I thank you for the invitation, and thank you for your attention. And if you'd like to learn anything more about my candidacy, feel free to go to harrisonforsantaclarita.com. Thank you. I'd be happy to take your questions. That's good, sir.
You said that the city council doesn't work for the school board doesn't work for the city council. How could you improve the school districts being on the city council?
I think there needs to be more communication between our local school boards and our city council, and I think that's something that's lacking right now. There isn't enough interdiscussion about what programs are going to be run or what we think the best solutions to some of the local problems would be.
What's your feeling on the expansion at Henry Mayo Newhall?
That's a very good question, and like I said, I don't have all the answers, and I haven't actually formulated an opinion on that issue. I think that there are serious questions that need to be addressed with the current plan, but I don't know enough about it to state an opinion.